There is a very good chance that you and I are going to live to be 100. The question is, what state are we going to be in? Are we going to be in a health span, or are we going to be in a disease span? Because let's face it, the sicker you get, the quicker you get there, the more expensive your life is, the more of a burden you are, and the less fun you have. So what are the factors that allow you to live a really long time? And what are the myths about how long you live? Let's start with the myths. Just because you eat organic, just because you exercise every day, does not mean that you're going to live a very long time. Are those things that can help you? Absolutely. Do they minimize risk factors? Sure. But let's talk about the lady named Jean Calment. She is the one who's actually documented as living the longest. She lived to 122 years and 100 something days. Let's look at what she did. She woke up at 6:45 in the morning. She would pray. She would do an exercise routine, and then she would have a cigarette, and then she'd have a little alcohol. Then she'd have a nap. Then she'd go hang out with her friends. 9:45 every day she was in bed. All right, so if you just listen to some of the things that went on there, what allowed her to make it to past 100? All centenarians have one thing in common. They have no autoimmune disease. Well, that's knocked out a whole bunch of us, including me possibly, because I have Hashimoto's disease, or at least that's what my blood markers say I do. For those of us who have autoimmune disease, let's minimize it and minimize all the risk factors we can so that we can reach that 100 as healthy as possible. So you got the autoimmune thing, but what's something that you can influence right now? The next factor that's going to determine how long you live is your lung capacity. How much can you inflate your lungs? How much do you use your lungs? You can check that with something called VO2 max. So you can look that up and see how you do that. But what you want to do is just focus on breathing from your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is going to be located, you go poke your ribs, find the last of the ribs. It's going to be a dome shape living right there. And every time that you inflate it, you actually increase that capacity for breath to come in. And in doing so, you increase the oxygen carbon dioxide exchange. You can look up Wim Hof method, Buteyko oxygen advantage method, box breathing, alternate nose breathing. Breathing techniques are like languages. There are so many of them and they all do different things. So for example, French is a language of diplomacy. So if I want to get really, really amped up in terms of breathing, right, I'm going to do Wim Hof method because that's going to give me immediate adrenaline. Let's say I need to calm down right now because someone is yelling at me and I can't do Wim Hof method right now. I can do box breathing where you breathe in for a count of 4, hold. Breathe out for 4, hold. Breathe in for 4, hold. Breathe out for 4, hold. That will calm you down right away. So again, there's all these different breathing techniques so that you can get that oxygen carbon dioxide exchange better. So you got autoimmune disease. Now you've got breathing, oxygen, lung capacity. Another factor that's going to determine how long you live is, are you on something called polypharmacy? Are you taking multiple medications? Because the more medications you take, the more chance you have of having an adverse reaction. And it tells you that your systems are breaking down more. So the quicker you can get off of your meds by doing other things like diet, lifestyle, nutrition, the better off you'll be. Next thing that you can do, which most of us can do because you're doing it right now, is getting social. Not just by watching videos, but one of the biggest factors for how long you're going to live is how connected to other people you are and your purpose. So get out there, join some kind of club, whether you are working with Boys and Girls Club, whether you're going to a women's club, something where you're with other people where you can make true connection. Because that's one of the greatest morbidities, is not being connected to people, isolation. Look what happened to people during COVID. Look at how weird they got because they couldn't be around other people. Let's change the weirdness and increase the longevity, shall we? Get connected to other people. Now, the last factor is my favorite factor, and it's a factor you can change at this very moment. How resilient are you? Think about when you were a little kid and you fell, how quickly you got up and you didn't have aches and pains, right? There's a reason for that. Your cells were really young. So stem cells, which is what you're born with, they can divide and divide and divide and divide. As we get older, we get these cells that are called senescent cells, senile cells. These suckers stop dividing and they just hang out, taking up real estate, not doing anything for you, okay? They're called garba cells, garbage cells. And so what happens as we get older, we collect more garba cells, and then things that normally wouldn't have bothered you, all of a sudden you get a massive inflammatory reaction because you got more garbage hanging out with you. So how can you get rid of garba cells? You can actually do some fasting. If you fast for 2 to 3 days, as long as you're not hypoglycemic and you're going to crash yourself, you can actually switch on something called autophagy. Autophagy is the cleanup of old crusty cells. That's not its actual definition, but this way you'll remember it. You'll get rid of garbage cells and you'll switch on the process of cleaning out old things. There's another thing that happens as we get older. It's called inflammaging. As we get older, because the cells aren't as resilient, things that would have inflamed you a little bit as a kid, now they inflame you a whole lot. So these are systems that break down as we age. So how do you minimize them? Great question, glad you asked. 2 things I would tell you. Exercise and take antioxidants, because your body gets approximately 70,000 free radical attacks a day just from processes that are happening in the body. So what free radicals do is they literally rip an electron off of something, which then rips an electron off of something. So you're tearing through stuff until you reach an antioxidant cell. An antioxidant cell goes, you don't need to rip anything off. I have an extra electron for you. Here you go. Now we can both be whole. So good electrolytes are going to be good for you for hydration. Good antioxidants are going to be good for you for stopping free radical damage. So those are going to be A, C, E, and even things with sulfur, like glutathione, which is the strongest antioxidant the human body makes. Load yourself up, pump yourself, dump yourself with antioxidants, because it's the one system that's going to stop that free radical damage. Now, in doing that free radical damage, what else does it do? It changes the way your DNA expresses. On the ends of your DNA, which look like little X's, there are things called telomeres. And the telomeres and the shortening of those telomeres is something that's also indicated in how long you're going to live and how healthy your cells are. Because you need healthy cells to keep dividing. If the cells are unhealthy, then you've got an unhealthy cell dividing to make 2 unhealthy cells. Now you've got 2 unhealthy cells that are dividing. Now you've got 4 unhealthy cells. So you're getting exponentially less healthy cells unless you do something to repair and protect those cells. So if you're someone who likes to take stuff, take antioxidants. If you're someone who likes to work out, as long as you work out in moderation, even 15 to 20 minutes, high intensity interval training 3 times a week massively can change your blood chemistry, can massively change the way your body is acting. And P.S., high intensity interval exercising for me would be very different than what it is for you. For some of my old people, it's getting to the mailbox as fast as they can 3 or 4 times a day. For me, it's pretending that T-Rex is chasing me on a bike and I got to get away from him for 30 seconds and then I chill out for 30 seconds. So those are things that you can do to minimize free radical damage. If you're someone who is actually very spiritual and you realize that emotions are going to impact the way your body functions, I've got a hard one for you, or at least it's hard for me. Forgiveness. They've done studies on forgiveness where not only does a person who does the forgiving feel better, the person who got forgiven gets better. Sometimes their blood pressure actually can drop. They've done things with forgiveness where people can jump higher after they've forgiven someone. So the amount of research we've done and what things like forgiveness, love, compassion, connection can do, they are so understated, but don't underrate them. So whether you choose to breathe better, exercise more, take antioxidants, let's see if you and I can party to 100.